The Caribbean sun beat down on Port Royal's weathered docks as I clutched the letter with trembling hands. My daughter Elena's elegant handwriting blurred before my eyes as rage threatened to consume me. "Father, I'm getting married to Captain Aldrich Blackwater, son of the Pirate King. The ceremony will be held on Isla de los Sueños in 3 weeks. I wish more than anything you could be there, but Father Blackwater has made it clear you are not welcome. He says your presence would dishonor the union. I'm so sorry. Please understand. I love you." Elena, I read it 7 times, each word cutting deeper. Aldrich Blackwater. Of all men in these vast Caribbean waters, my Elena had fallen for the son of Marcus Ironheart Blackwater, the Pirate King who controlled every trade route from Trinidad to the Bahamas. The same man who had taken my wife 15 years ago when his fleet raided our merchant vessel. The same man who had stolen my livelihood and scattered my family to the winds. Now he wanted to take this too. I stood watching the turquoise waters shimmer under the afternoon light. Seabirds cried overhead, their calls mixing with shouts of dockworkers hauling barrels of rum. The air smelled of salt, fish, and sweet rotting fruit. This world had shaped me, broken me, and now asked me to surrender the one thing I had left. "Not a chance in hell," I muttered. "Talking to yourself again, Cristobal?" Rodrigo approached with his characteristic limp, a souvenir from a knife fight in Cartagena 20 years ago. His dark skin glistened with sweat, grey-streaked hair tied back with a faded red bandana. I handed him the letter. "Read this and tell me I'm not losing my mind." He scanned it, his expression darkening. "Ironheart Blackwater. That bastard really knows how to twist the knife. He thinks he can keep me from my daughter's wedding," I said through clenched teeth. "He thinks I'll just accept this." Rodrigo's eyes grew serious. "Cristobal, I know what you're thinking. It's suicide. You crash that wedding, you're not walking away. Remember what happened to Santiago?" I remembered. Santiago had been found floating face down in Kingston Harbor with his tongue cut out. "I don't care," I said flatly. "Elena is my only child. When her mother died, I promised I'd be there for every important moment. I've already missed too much. I won't miss this." Rodrigo studied me, then sighed. "You're really going to do this?" "I am. Then you need help. I know someone who might get us to Isla de los Sueños. Someone who hates the Pirate King even more than you. Marisol de la Cruz." I remembered her. Her former pirate captain, betrayed by Blackwater and left for dead. She'd survived and now operated in shadows, helping those wanting to strike back. "Can you arrange a meeting?" "Tomorrow night. El Loro Verde Tavern. Come alone and don't tell anyone. If word gets back to Blackwater's spies, you'll be dead before you leave port." That night I couldn't sleep. I lay listening to Port Royal's night sounds, distant laughter, breaking glass, a woman's mournful ballad. The Caribbean moon cast silver light through my window, and I wondered if Elena was looking at that same moon, thinking of me. The next evening, I made my way to El Loro Verde. The tavern was tucked down a narrow alley where cobblestones were slick with spilled rum. Inside, tobacco smoke hung thick. Rodrigo sat at a corner table with a woman I recognized immediately. Marisol de la Cruz was in her late 40s, copper-colored skin marked by survival scars. Her black hair was shot through with silver, and her eyes were storm-cloud gray, hard, calculating, fearless. "Cristobal Mendoza," she said as I sat. "Rodrigo tells me you want to commit suicide by crashing the Pirate King's wedding. I want to see my daughter get married." She laughed bitterly. "Same thing. You have any idea what security will be like? Every pirate captain who serves Blackwater will be there. Guards everywhere, ships patrolling. It's a fortress. I don't care." "Tell me what it will take." Marisol leaned back, studying me. "Money, a crew, a fast ship, and a plan so crazy nobody will see it coming. But most of all, the willingness to risk everything, including your daughter's safety." "What do you mean?" "If we fail, Blackwater won't just kill you. He'll make an example in front of everyone, including Elena. She'll watch her father die. Can you live with that?" The question hung in the air. Could I? Was my need to be there worth potentially destroying her happiest day? I thought about my promise to my dying wife, about all the moments I'd missed, About what it meant to be a father in impossible times. Yes, I said finally. Because if I don't try, I'll die anyway, slowly, from the inside. My daughter deserves to know her father fought to be there. Marisol smiled genuinely for the first time. Then we have a chance. I have a plan. It's dangerous, borderline insane, and requires perfect timing. But it might work. Tell me. As candles burned low, Marisol laid out a plan that would either reunite me with my daughter or send me to the Caribbean's depths. 3 days later, I stood aboard the Serpiente Blanca, Marisol's ship, anchored in a hidden cove on Jamaica's western side. The sleek brigantine was built for speed, white sails patched but well-maintained, crew moving with practiced efficiency. "Welcome to my floating home," Marisol said, showing me around. The morning sun cast long shadows across weathered planks. Cool air carried tropical bird calls from the jungle pressing close to shore. "She's beautiful," I said. "She's fast, which is what we need." The Pirate King's ships are heavily armed, but built for intimidation and cargo. The Serpiente Blanca can outrun anything in his fleet if we're smart. Over the next week, I learned the plan's details. It relied on misdirection, timing, and deep knowledge of Blackwater's psychology. But first, we needed the right people. Rodrigo had already signed on, but we needed specialists. First was Lucia, a quartermaster who could navigate by stars better than anyone in the Caribbean. Young, maybe 30, with sun-bleached hair and muscled arms from years working rigging. "I owe Blackwater for my brother," she told me bluntly. "He pressed him into service 5 years ago. My brother tried to desert. They hanged him as an example. So yeah, I'm in." Second was Thomas Pembroke, an Englishman who'd served as a Royal Navy gunner before deserting. He was massive, over 6 feet, barrel-chested with hands like ham hocks. He also had a drinking problem. Why him? I asked Marisol, because if things go wrong, we might need to fight our way out. Nobody's better with cannon than Thomas when sober. Plus, he knows Isla de los Sueños. He was stationed there 20 years ago when the British controlled it. We found Thomas in a Falmouth rum shop, 3 sheets to the wind. It took an hour and several buckets of water to sober him up. "A job," he slurred. "What kind?" "The kind where you point cannons at the Pirate King's men," Marisol said, his eyes focused. "I'm listening." When we finished explaining, he laughed deeply. "You're all completely mad. When do we leave?" The last crew member was most important. Isabella, a seamstress in Havana, the same city where Eleanor had grown up. Elena's best friend since childhood, and she'd been invited to the wedding. Getting to Havana meant 3 days sailing across open water. The Serpiente Blanca cut through waves beautifully. I spent most of the voyage on deck, watching endless blue and trying to quiet my doubts. Rodrigo found me the second night, staring at stars. "You're thinking too much," he said, offering rum. I took a sip. "How can I not? Every version I play out ends badly. That's because you only see endings where things go wrong. What about the ending where you walk your daughter down the aisle, where she knows her father moved heaven and earth to be there? That seems like fantasy. Maybe, but isn't that what faith is? Believing in fantasy when reality looks impossible?" He took back the flask. "You've lost so much. Don't lose hope too. It's the only thing they can't take, unless you give it away." We arrived in Havana on a humid afternoon when the city was drowsy with heat. Colonial buildings glowed white and pastel, streets smelling of tobacco, coffee and salt air. Marisol went to find Isabella while we waited at a harbor cafe. 2 hours later, Marisol returned with a young woman who had intelligent eyes and quiet determination. Isabella studied my face carefully. "You're Elena's father," she said. "I am." "She's told you about me?" "Everything. How much she misses you. How angry she is at the Pirate King for forbidding you. How much it's breaking her heart." Isabella leaned forward. "She tried arguing with Blackwater, but he was adamant. He said your presence would insult his family. Aldrich tried intervening, but even he can't overrule his father. Tell me about Aldrich. Is he good to her?" Isabella's expression softened. "He loves her. Really loves her. He's not like his father. He wants to build something different, legitimate. He's been trying to convince his father to move away from piracy. That's partly why this wedding is so important to Blackwater, cementing his legacy, bringing allies together, which is why security will be impossible, Marisol said. Not impossible, Isabella corrected. Just extremely difficult. She pulled out folded parchment. I've been helping with preparations. I have the ceremony site layout, event timing, and guest list. I also know where Elena will be beforehand. She spread the parchment on the table, a detailed map of Isla de los Sueños showing the main compound surrounding gardens and harbour. Marisol studied it intently. This is gold, Isabella. We can refine our approach. She looked up. But are you willing to risk your friendship if this goes wrong? If caught, you'll be implicated too. Isabella didn't hesitate. Elena is like a sister. She deserves her father at her wedding. Besides, she added with a slight smile, I've always wanted to punch the Pirate King. This is as close as I'll get. We spent the afternoon reviewing details. Isabella would travel with other guests, acting as our eyes and ears inside. She'd keep us informed of schedule changes and signal when the moment was right. One more thing, Isabella said. Elena doesn't know you're coming. If we tell her, she might try stopping you. She's terrified something will happen. It has to be a surprise. My heart clenched. My daughter was afraid for me. After everything, she still cared, understood. We'll keep it secret until the moment itself. That night aboard the Serpiente Blanca, I stood at the bow looking at Havana's twinkling lights. The plan was coming together. We had our crew, intelligence and strategy. In 1 week, we'd sail for Isla de los Sueños. In 1 week, I'd either see my daughter marry or die trying. Tropical wind picked up, warm and carrying night-blooming flower scents. Somewhere in that city, Elena was preparing for her wedding, unaware her father was preparing for war. I'm coming, mija, I whispered to the wind. Nothing will stop me. The morning we set sail, the Caribbean was restless. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, wind carrying storm promises. Marisol stood at the wheel, experienced eyes reading the weather. We'll skirt the edge, she announced. If we're lucky, the storm provides cover. Blackwater's patrol ships won't look for trouble in rough seas. I helped Rodrigo secure cargo below, gunpowder, ammunition, medical supplies, weapons. Everything we'd need if things went wrong. Thomas checked cannons for the 3rd time, his usual drunken haze replaced by intense focus. Lucia emerged with updated charts. Isabella sent word this morning. Wedding still on schedule. 3 days from now, late afternoon. She confirms 40 ships anchored around the island and at least 200 men on shore. 200, I repeated, stomach sinking. Don't think about numbers, Marisol said. Think about chaos. A wedding that size, with those egos all in one place. Organized chaos at best. That's what we're counting on. We sailed east, following the island chain, dotting the Caribbean like emeralds on blue silk. The first day was uneventful. But on the second day, we spotted something chilling. Ship to starboard, Lucia called from the crow's nest. 3-masted frigate, flying Blackwater's colors. One of the Pirate King's warships, massive frigate with black sails and the skull and cross cutlass's flag, cut through water about 2 miles off. They've seen us, Marisol said calmly. But they won't bother with a small trader unless we give them reason. Everyone act natural. My heart hammered as we worked, trying to look like ordinary sailors. The frigate moved closer. Through peripheral vision, I saw armed men watching with telescopes. They're signaling, Lucia called. Asking our business, Marisol shouted back in perfect Spanish. Tobacco and rum for San Juan. May the winds favor you. A tense moment hung. The ship sailed parallel, close enough to see individual faces. One man, a captain by his coat, stared directly at me. Our eyes met across water. Then he waved dismissively, and the frigate turned away. I exhaled. That was too close. It was perfect, Marisol corrected. We just passed our first test. That night the storm arrived. Rain lashed horizontally, waves tall as houses crashed over the bow. We took in most sails and lashed down everything. The Serpiente Blanca pitched and rolled wildly. Marisol and Lucia worked in perfect harmony, steering through the worst. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving a scrubbed-clean sky of impossible blue. There, Marisol said, pointing, Isla de los Sueños. The island rose like a green jewel. Dense jungle covered most of it, but on the eastern side, buildings and dozens of ships in the harbor. Blackwater's fleet all gathered. We anchored in a concealed cove on the opposite side, hidden by rocky outcroppings and thick vegetation. From here, we go on foot, Marisol said, assembling the crew. Isabella meets us at noon. We have 3 hours to get into position before the ceremony at 3 o'clock. She laid out final details. Thomas would stay with the ship, ready to provide covering fire. The rest would make our way through jungle to the compound. Isabella would smuggle in appropriate clothing. The ceremony's in the garden behind Blackwater's main house. About 100 guests. The Pirate King will be front and center with his captains. Elena and Aldrich will enter from the house, walk through guests to an altar. Where do I fit in? I asked. That's the tricky part. We can get you to the ceremony, but what happens next is up to you. You'll have one chance to make yourself known. After that, all hell breaks loose. We'll have maybe 60 seconds to get you out. 60 seconds, maybe less. Which is why you need to decide what you're going to say to Elena. Make it count. I've been thinking about this for weeks. Grand speeches, tearful apologies. But standing there, looking at the island where my daughter would marry, I realized none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was being there. At noon precisely, we gathered where jungle met cleared land. Isabella appeared like a ghost, carrying clothing bundles. You made it, she said, relieved. I was worried the storm delayed you. Takes more than a storm to stop us, Marisol said. What's the situation? Chaotic. Guests have been arriving all morning. Blackwater's men are everywhere, but they're more focused on impressing each other than actual security. Ceremony's still at 3. Elena's in the main house with Aldrich and his family. She looks beautiful but sad. My heart ached. How long until we move? 1 hour. Guests will be seated by 2:30. That's when we approach, blending with late arrivals. I've arranged 3 seats in the back row. Far enough from Blackwater you won't be immediately noticed, close enough to reach Elena when the moment comes. We changed into fine clothes Isabella brought. I barely recognized myself in polished brass. I looked almost respectable. The hour passed both too quickly and too slowly. Finally, Isabella gave the signal, and we began walking toward the compound. Every step brought me closer to triumph or disaster. The compound was impressive. Sprawling Spanish colonial estate with white walls, red tile roofs, arched doorways. Gardens filled with tropical flowers surrounded buildings. I could hear music drifting on the afternoon breeze. Guards stood at various points, but Isabella's confidence carried us through. She nodded familiarly, and they waved us past. We were just 3 more guests among dozens. The ceremony site was as Isabella described. Rows of chairs faced a white flower-decorated altar. Guests were Caribbean piracies, who's who, captains. Quartermasters, merchants, smugglers, all in their finest. And there, seated in the front row like a dark throne, was Marcus Ironheart Blackwater himself. He was older than I'd expected, with iron-grey hair and granite face. But his eyes were sharp, missing nothing, and the way others deferred spoke of power beyond physical strength. This was a man who'd clawed his way to the top and held that position through cunning and ruthlessness. This was the man who had taken everything from me, and in minutes I would defy him before everyone he ruled. We took back row seats. My hands shook, so I clasped them together. Rodrigo leaned close. Steady, old friend. Almost there. The music changed, a processional melody on strings. Everyone stood and turned toward the house, and then I saw her. Elena, my daughter. She was radiant in ivory silk, dark hair crowned with flowers. She'd grown into a woman of strength and grace, so much like her mother it made my chest tight. She walked arm in arm with Aldrich, a handsome young man who looked at her with obvious adoration. But even from the back row, I could see sadness in Elena's eyes. The missing piece, the empty space where her father should have been. I watched as they processed down the aisle, as guests whispered, as Blackwater nodded with satisfaction. As Elena and Aldrich took their places at the altar, as the priest began speaking words that would bind them together, and I knew I couldn't wait any longer. This was my moment. My legs moved before my brain fully processed the decision. I stood up, and in the Caribbean afternoon heat, time seemed to slow. The priest was midway through his opening blessing. I started walking down the aisle. The first person to notice was a woman in the third row who did a double take. Then her companion saw me and whispered urgently. Like dominoes falling, heads began turning. Surprise rippled forward through assembled guests. Elena hadn't seen me yet. She faced the priest, holding Aldrich's hands, lost in the moment. But Aldrich noticed the disturbance. He looked past the priest, his eyes finding me, expression shifting from confusion to recognition to alarm. I kept walking. 20 feet from the altar. 15. That's when Marcus Blackwater turned around. Our eyes met across the flower-strewn garden, and I saw recognition flare in his face, followed immediately by intense fury. He started to rise, hand moving toward his belt pistol. "Elena!" I called out, my voice cutting through rising chaos. She spun around, her bouquet nearly falling. For a moment she didn't recognize me. But then her eyes widened. "Papa," she whispered. Then louder, disbelieving, "Papa!" "I'm here, Mija," I said, voice breaking. "I'm here." Blackwater was on his feet now, and a dozen men were moving toward me. But Elena stepped away from the altar and started running toward me. "Stop her!" Blackwater roared, but Elena didn't stop. She gathered her gown and ran, and when she reached me, she threw her arms around my neck with such force we both nearly fell. She was sobbing, tears soaking my coat, and I held her like I'd wanted to for 15 years. "You came," she kept saying. "You came. I can't believe you're here." "Nothing could have kept me away," I said, voice thick with tears. "Nothing. Enough!" Blackwater's voice was like thunder. His men had surrounded us, muskets and pistols drawn. Wedding guests erupted into chaos, some standing, others moving away, everyone talking at once. Elena pulled back but kept her hands on my arms as if afraid I'd disappear. She looked up, face streaked with tears but radiant with joy. "I thought I'd have to get married without you." "You thought wrong," I said gently, wiping a tear from her cheek. "A father's place is by his daughter's side, always." "Cristobal Mendoza," Blackwater said, striding toward us with murder in his eyes. "You dare show your face? You dare interrupt my son's wedding?" I turned to face him, keeping Elena slightly behind me. "This is my daughter's wedding too. I have every right to be here." "You have no rights," Blackwater snarled, close enough that I could see veins pulsing in his temple. "Guards, seize this man and remove him immediately." Before his men could move, Aldrich stepped forward, positioning himself between me and his father. "Stop, father, please. This is Elena's father. She has every right to have him here." "The decision is not yours to make," Blackwater said coldly. "Stand aside, Aldrich." "No." Aldrich's voice was steady, despite the effort it took to stand up to his father. "I won't. I love Elena, and I won't start our marriage by denying her this. If you remove her father, you'll have to remove me too." The garden fell silent. Blackwater stared at his son with an expression cycling through shock, rage, and something like hurt. "You would choose this man over your own father? Over everything I've built? I'm choosing the woman I love," Aldrich said. "And I'm choosing the man I want to become, someone who doesn't rule through fear. Someone who understands that power without compassion is just tyranny." He took Elena's hand. "You can be part of our future, father, or you can cling to your old ways and lose us both. The choice is yours." I watched Marcus Blackwater's face, saw the internal struggle. This was a man who'd built an empire on never showing weakness, never backing down. But he was also a father, watching his son slip away. From the crowd, a voice called out, one of Blackwater's captains. "Let the man stay, Marcus. It's a wedding, not a war council." Another voice. My daughters were at my wedding. Every girl deserves her father there." More voices rose, creating a swell even the Pirate King couldn't ignore. I could see calculation in his eyes. How much political capital would it cost to execute a man at his son's wedding? Finally, Blackwater spoke, voice like gravel. "You have until the ceremony ends." Then you leave this island and never return. If I see you again in any waters I control, I will have you hanged. Understood? Perfectly, I said. He turned to guards. Watch him. If he makes any move I don't like, shoot him. Then to Elena and Aldrich, continue the ceremony. We've wasted enough time. He stalked back to his seat. The crowd settled, but everything had changed. The carefully orchestrated power display had been cracked open. The priest, thoroughly flustered, cleared his throat. Shall we continue? Elena looked at me, eyes still shining. Papa, will you walk me? Properly this time? My throat was too tight to speak, so I just nodded. Eldrick returned to the altar, and I offered Elena my arm. Together, we walked back down the aisle, as father and daughter as it should have been from the start. I could feel Blackwater's eyes boring into my back, sense guards tracking every movement. But I didn't care. Walking my daughter toward her future, I was the richest man in the Caribbean. When we reached the altar, I placed Elena's hand in Aldrich's. The young man met my eyes and nodded, a silent promise to take care of her. I saw genuine love there. Thank you, he said quietly. I stepped back to the side, where Isabella and Marisol had materialized. Marisol's hand rested on her pistol, ready to fight if needed. But for now we had fragile peace. The priest resumed the ceremony, voice regaining confidence. I watched as Elena and Aldrich exchanged vows, promises of love, fidelity, partnership. I watched as they exchanged rings, as the priest pronounced them husband and wife, as they sealed their union with a kiss that drew cheers. Through it all, Elena kept glancing at me, as if to confirm I was really there. Each time our eyes met, I smiled, and she smiled back through tears. When the ceremony concluded and guests rose to congratulate the couple, Elena broke from the receiving line and came straight to me. She wrapped her arms around me again, holding on like when she was a little girl. I can't believe you're really here, she said into my chest. I know what it cost you, what you risked. You're worth any risk, I said, stroking her hair. You're worth everything. Aldrich joined us, extending his hand. Thank you for coming, Senor Mendoza. I know it wasn't easy. I want you to know I'll spend every day making sure your daughter is happy. I shook his hand firmly. That's all a father can ask. Call me Cristobal. Then you must call me Aldrich. He glanced at his father. My father is complicated, but he loves me in his way, and I believe he can change. I hope that someday you two can find peace. Perhaps, I said, though I doubted it. The reception was tense but civil. Tables laden with food and drink filled the garden. Roasted pork, fresh fish, tropical fruits, enough rum to float a small fleet. Music played, people danced, and for hours it almost felt like a normal celebration. Blackwater kept his distance, but I felt his presence like a storm cloud. Several captains approached me cautiously, curious about the man who dared crash the Pirate King's wedding. That took balls, one grizzled captain told me, raising his glass. Stupid, but impressive. As the sun began setting, painting the Caribbean sky orange and purple, Elena found me at the garden's edge, looking out at the sea. What are you thinking about? She asked, slipping her hand into mine. About how much you've grown. About how proud your mother would be. About how lucky I am to have been here. I'm the lucky one. I have my father back, even if only for a little while. She paused. You're leaving tonight, aren't you? We sail with the tide. It's not safe to stay longer. But Elena, I'm not gone. Not really. I'll find ways to get messages to you to stay part of your life. This isn't goodbye forever. Promise me you'll be careful. That you won't take unnecessary risks. I just got you back. I can't lose you again. I promise, I said, knowing it was a promise I might not keep. But I'd say anything to ease the worry in her eyes. We talked until stars came out, making up for years of lost conversations. Finally, when the moon was high and most guests had drifted into drunken celebration, Marisol appeared. It's time. The guard change happens in 20 minutes. That's our window. I nodded, then turned to Elena. I have to go now, Mija. Her face crumpled. So soon. Your father-in-law was very clear, but remember, this isn't goodbye. This is just until next time. She hugged me fiercely, and I felt her tears on my neck again. I love you, Papa. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being brave enough to be here. I love you too, more than all the water in all the oceans. Be happy, Elena. That's all I want. Aldrich came to say goodbye, shaking my hand. Travel safely, Cristobal. And know that you have a son now too, if you'll have me. I'd be honored, I said. And meant it, Isabella Rodrigo, Marisol. And I slipped away from the celebration as planned, moving through shadows toward the jungle path. Behind us, I could hear music and laughter continuing. We'd almost reached the tree line when a voice called out, "Mendoza!" I turned to find Marcus Blackwater standing 30 feet away, alone. In his hand was a pistol pointed at my chest. "Father, no!" Elena's voice came from the darkness. She'd followed us. Blackwater didn't take his eyes off me. "I gave you until the ceremony ended. That time has passed." "Then shoot me," I said calmly. "But know that if you do, you'll lose your son forever. And your reputation will be that of the man who murdered a father at his own son's wedding. Is that the legacy you want?" For a long moment we stood frozen, the Pirate King with his pistol, me waiting, my daughter crying in shadows, my friends ready to fight. Then, slowly, Blackwater lowered the pistol. "You're right. Killing you here would be inconvenient." He stepped closer, voice dropping to a growl. "But make no mistake, you embarrassed me today. You challenged my authority before everyone who matters. That's not something I forgive. If our paths cross again, I will end you. No witnesses, no mercy. Understand. I understand. But I don't regret it. I'd do it all again for her." Something flickered in Blackwater's eyes. Maybe respect, maybe just more rage. "Get off my island now." We melted into the jungle, moving quickly through darkness. Behind us, I heard Elena calling my name one last time, her voice full of love and sorrow. The trek back took 2 hours, but we made it without incident. Thomas had the Serpiente Blanca ready, and we pushed off into the night sea with all the stealth we could manage. As the island receded behind us, swallowed by darkness, I stood at the stern, watching until I could no longer see even a glimmer of light. Rodrigo joined me, offering rum. We did it. Against all odds, we actually pulled it off. We did. She was beautiful, wasn't she? So happy despite everything. She was. And you were there to see it. That's what matters. I thought about that as we sailed through the Caribbean night, stars brilliant overhead and warm wind filling our sails. I'd risked everything for a few hours with my daughter. I'd made an enemy of the most powerful man in these waters. I'd probably shortened my life expectancy considerably, and I'd do it all again, in a heartbeat, because love isn't about the odds. It isn't about safety or making the smart choice. Love is about showing up when it matters, about fighting for the people who matter to you, about refusing to let fear or power take away what's most important. I'd lost my wife to these waters. I'd lost years with my daughter. But today, for a few precious hours, I'd won. I'd been exactly where I needed to be, exactly when it mattered most. As dawn broke over the Caribbean, painting the waves in gold and pink, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the peace of a finished story, but the peace of knowing I'd given everything I had for something that mattered. Somewhere behind us, Elena was starting her new life. And somewhere ahead, there would be more challenges, more dangers, more struggles. But today, I'd walked my daughter down the aisle at her wedding. Today, I'd looked Marcus Blackwater in the eye and refused to back down. Today, I'd proven that a father's love was stronger than any pirate's power, and that was enough. The Serpiente Blanca cut through the morning waves, carrying us toward whatever came next, and I smiled into the rising sun.